Hello YouTubers, and welcome to another tutorial of Flash CS4 Professional. This is a tutorial on what? On using a bone tool in Flash CS4. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to try and use the bone tool. This is the what the bone tool looks like. It's over here in the tools panel. It's got a little icon next to it where you can use the bind tool too, and the bone tool. I haven't found the bind tool too effective, but some people use it. I guess later on I'll be using it as I go along. I've been on the web looking at some of the different videos on the bone tool. There's a bunch of different videos on it. I've noticed a lot of people have problems with the bone tools. A lot of them are kind of simplistic, but you know, you got to start somewhere with it. But the bone tool is a lot more complicated than most people think. Here's a really good tutorial by flashformortals.com, or that's his name. And a lot of people use these little symbols to connect their bones to. I tried to use that. It didn't seem to work for me. And there was a lot of people had problems with where the bones were connected, and a lot of them were more simplified. Like this one is a simplified version of what the bone tool does and how it connects. And that's what we're going to look at today. So we're going to close those tabs. And this is my character that I've created. And his name is Zoltan, and I'm going to show you the process of how I went along to create the bone tools and what happened. At first I took him and separated him into a bunch of different parts, you know, like you do for animation. And then as you can see, let me zoom in here a little bit. As you can see, I've got him all on these different layers. I've got his right leg, the chest, pants, belt. And up here you'll see a thing called one layer. And the reason I have this is because I kept trying to use all these separate layers and create an armature out of it with Zoltan. I'll kind of show you what it looked like. If this, I don't even know if it's on here, but I guess it's not here. This is how he looked when he first started. Zoom out here a little bit, and I just kind of moved the different parts of his body around to different parts of the stage. You know, I tried to keep them all together, and then I took the bone tool and I started from his center point, which were his pants, and I linked them together, and I would like link this one to the next one to the next one. And when I put them on here like this and I tried to move them, I had them all linked together and I would pull them back together. When I would try and move them, let me grab something so I can show you about moving them. They seemed to work fine at first as far as moving the bones, but when I moved this leg over here, this leg would get out of whack. And every time I try to move a different part of him, it would get out all of whack. I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. I think maybe no, not that one. Side armature. This one. As you can see here, I made an armature, and each part had its own armature. Over here is the armature for the left leg. Now when I make the left leg and then I make the armature appears in a separate layer, and then left leg disappears. So if you destroy the armature, you can't go back and get your left leg again. It destroys the whole leg. And then I would try and do each one, different ones for different parts of the body. Let's see what we got here. This was the actual armature that I created. I hooked them into his legs here, and each one had constraints on it. As you can see by selecting a certain one, you could see here that this particular joint, which is shoulder, you can see that circle right there, is the constraints, is how far that shoulder can move. See, it can only move to here, or if you move it this way, it can move all the way around to there. So I created an armature for each joint, like there's constraints on this joint and constraints on this joint. Now when you select a joint, you got to select the bone, and that selects the transformation point. And I found out later that there's two different ways to move things in Flash. You can move them with the armature, or you can use the transform tool. And the transform tool changes, and this is how the transform tool, the transformation point, which can be moved, is actually where the bone is connected to. And as you can see, the transform point on this arm is right up here up top. And when I originally did the whole graphic, different parts of it, the transformation point wasn't at the right place compared to the registration mark, and I'll show you that. If you go into this arm here, you see the registration point there on the elbow. Well, that's got to be in the exact same place as the actual, that was the registration point, and this is the transformation point, because the transformation point is where the bone is connected to. And I can move this around and connect the bone anywhere I want. Now watch, it's in the middle of his arm, right? So now that it's in the middle of his arm, if I go back and select the selection tool and select the bone again, you see how the bone is now in the middle of his arm. And that's a big mistake that a lot of people make, is how they don't know how to get this bone right where they want it. Well, if you try and move it now, it kind of messes the arm up because it's in the middle, you know. And it messed me up too. And that wasn't all. That's just how you get the points on the bones where you want them on each individual thing. And the way you get in there, you can't get in there with using the selection tool. I don't know, you might be able to get in there with selection tool, sub-selection tool. Let's see. No, sub-selection tool won't work. You have to use the free transform tool, and then you can move the point. But the other thing that I had a mistake with was I didn't have the registration point, which is inside the symbol, right where the transformation point is. And this is the registration mark for the symbol itself. So when I came out here and I was using the bone tool and I went to grab the bones, I would move this arm, and I'd be about halfway down here, you know, I would move this thing, and the slider tells us where in time that arm is, right? Well, I'd get over here, and then I would want to move this arm, you know, a slight bit, and you see it places a keyframe there. But I would say, oh, it's just a little out of place, and I would come with the transformation tool, and I would come in here and I would try and twist it just a little bit, and I'd have to grab the other one, and the next thing you know, it would fall apart. And even when I did move it all at the same time, it would end up moving something else, and my character would seem to fall apart halfway through the armature. So after long times, you know, many hours of frustration, I decided to take all of his body parts and put them on one layer instead of several different layers, and then make one armature. Like here you see there's one armature. Well, before I did one armature for his leg, left leg, right leg, but then when I moved his left leg, it wouldn't move with the rest of his, it wouldn't stay with his body like I wanted to. The hip wouldn't stay in place where I wanted to. And if I would try and remove the registration point, it would move the other leg. It seemed like every time I moved one part of it, the other part would move. Well, what I finally ended up doing was, and you can see him move here, it's great that you're able to move him like that. This is where I at least learned to put it on one, his whole body on one armature, and it seemed to work pretty good. But then I went ahead and did what is called here one layer armature. See, and I took all the body parts and put them on one layer, and this is the armature for it. Now all I have to do is insert a frame, and now I can go along, and I have some of these symbols are graphic symbols, like his feet. You see his feet and his hands twitching, because you see him twitching there? That's because I have them set as graphic symbols, and graphic symbols will automatically, on mine anyway, they're set to loop, and see, it's set to loop, so we don't want them to loop. We're going to put them on single frame. So now this boot is in single frame, and I got to put this boot in single frame instead of loop, and I think this hand was still stuck into it. So I'm going to go over here and put it to single frame. So now when we scroll through, he's not going to do that. But see, sometimes you might want to do it because these graphics, if you want to change the graphic of the foot or something, you can make a graphic of a foot with several different positions in it. Like if you look at this one, if you look at this foot, it has different angles in it. See how the foot bends? Well, sometimes when I have the foot back, I want the foot to bend, or I want it to, change position, and then I would play another keyframe. So that's a whole nother discussion as far as graphics, with compared to movie clips. All the rest of him is done in a movie clip. But anyway, so this works a lot better. You can now take the armature and move it anywhere you want, and they're all constrained right, and I hooked them in through the belt here. As you can see, they're both hooked into this belt, and then I would select which ones I wanted to move or didn't move. So like the body coming up from the belt hooks onto this thing that he has in the center of his chest. I have a symbol there. It's just a round circle, but I was using it for his whole body, but I mean, I just liked it as a graphic art. I was going to do something like flashing lights out of it or something, but I ended up connecting to it with the armature, so I can move his whole upper body now, and his arms and his head, and they're allowed to move so much by the constraints over here. So you select one of them. You got to select the bone, not the circle that it's in. Like if you want to do this one's constrain, you select this bone, and then you go over here, and it's got enable. That means to enable it to rotate, and then constrain this is the minimum and the maximum of the constrain, and that's that little line there. This is the actual movement of. It'd be great if you could grab onto these little handles, but you can't. But when you move it, it's only going to go as far as that line allows it to go. So if I move the constraint, this got like a slider on it, and I can move the constraints more or less. And that will allow how far his arm will go back. Like if I only want his arm to go that high, great. If I want his arm to go farther, I can make that constraint greater, and now his arm will go back farther. And you can constrain his arm to, or any part of him, you can enable X translation or Y translation too, which is translation according to moving out or back. Most of the time, especially with rigging characters, you're trying to constrain the motion so that things don't flip around. Like these hands, they will still flip around. See how it flips around if I'm not careful? Because you can't constrain the end of the chain. You can only constrain up to the end of the chain. You know what I mean? This one's going to either rotate or not rotate, and you want it to be able to rotate his hand a little bit, you know, but you just don't rotate it out like that because it would look silly. So you put it back to where, you know, it can be, and it will stay according to the rest of the IK chain. So I found out how to put the registration point on the symbol. Like in this one, you see the registration point is the same as the transformation point, and this is where the bone is going to be connected to. So if I start moving this and skewing it and stuff, it gets difficult, but you can do it with the transformation tool. In fact, like here in the middle, if I wanted to move his entire body up, I can do that. I can use the transformation tool and have him entirely jump up at this position or fly up or whatever. So now he still does what he does, but his whole body moves up. Or if you just want one part of his body to move up or down, or, you know, it's really good. Like if you're doing jumps, like I would get him up to here, and then I would say, okay, that's the pose, and I'm going to take the bone tool now. I'm going to move his leg like this, like he's jumping, you know, and put his foot down like that. So he would change from whoa, you know, whoa, he's jumping up. So once you get it all on one layer, like this is up here, once you get it all in one layer, he's much more easier to control, and it doesn't fall all apart on you. And that was one of the basic problems I had, was getting it all in one piece. So now that I've got him like that, I also noticed that after I did the motion that I wanted him to do, it was really hard to control this thing, because you're supposed to, the only way you can select one part of it is to press Control and Enter, and it stops, or Control and Enter and stops here. And if you select part of it, you can't just select part of this armature and say, okay, remove those frames. See, remove frames is disabled. So you're kind of stuck with how far you put out the frame, and you might not want it to run that far and everything else. So after I got done with this and did the basic keyframing for how he was going to jump or whatever, then I turned around and I would go up here and I would right click on this and say convert to frame by frame animation. Of course I'd have to select it all, but you select the whole thing and say convert to frame by frame animation. So now that this is converted to frame by frame animation, wow, look at all those different registration points. Anyway, then he's going to still do the exact same thing that he did before. But now you can go in and tweak it a little bit and say, okay, here I want this to move there, I want this to skew a little bit here, I want it to turn a little bit. But you have the major motion done for you with the armature, and that really helps. Let me show you some of the things I was able to accomplish with it. Here's a keyframe. Here's one of the first ones I did. This is without the single line armature. This had several lines on it, and I turned it to a keyframe, and I had to turn it into a keyframe at the end and get a keyframe online because I wanted to do a running Zoltan, and it works pretty good. This is like just his running scene, and there he is running along. So I did the major things with the bone tool, and then I came back in and turned it into keyframes and tweaked it just a little bit to get it perfect according to my drawing, where his head kind of bobs up and down a little bit as he's running and everything else. Now that's one of them. Here's some other ones I finished. I did the Zoltan walk cycle. Here's his walk cycle. It looks pretty nice when it's done. And this was done without the bone tool. This is all done in keyframes, and it turned out pretty good. You know, if you can make them walk along with ActionScript too, and it adds that much more realism to them. You do each part of the character in his separate modes. Here's the walk mode, and then here's the jump mode and the run mode, and then you put them all together in one single thing. And that's why it's so important to try and keep this thing not keyframes. You want to keep it like this and just save that file separately, and then you can use it to change his position and do whatever the hell you want with him. Here you want his arm out, and you can make him fight and do different stances in this way, and then once you convert them to keyframes, copy those, put it in a new file, and tweak them to where you want them, and add them to your other compilation, you know what I mean, and make it one full stream of, like, if you wanted him to, I want him to act like he jumped up and he's going to dive into a pool, so I'm going to move his arms up like this. I'm going to take his whole body and spin it around, so now he's going to swim. Here I want him to move his leg, he's diving now. His leg goes back, his feet go up, right? This is his body kind of bends down a little bit. He's going to dive into a pool. Here you have the next frame. You take his whole body, and this is how you got to switch between the transformation and the selection tool, because the selection tool selects the armature and the free transform tool transforms everything to the way you want it to be. So here I'm going to move him over a little bit, and it's just like using key by classic tweening, but you have to jump back and forth. So now I went up here and grabbed the selection tool. I'm going to make his hands come down more now. His legs go back. So here we have him kind of jumping up, and he's gonna go swimming, splash. See, so once you get this main armature done right, which is just all on a single frame. If you put them on separate frames like I had in this other one, like this, it comes out kind of staticky. I mean, it works okay, but then when you go to move a certain part of his body, you can do it. I mean, it worked okay, but I like it better as one layer, and you could just move it any way you want and then change it to keyframes and put it in a new thing. So that's basically an overview of the bone tool and the way you have to work with it, as far as using your selection tool to select the bones and your transformation tool to select the transformation points. And remember that the registration points in the graphic must be in the same place that the transformation point is. If it's not, when you go to set the bones on this particular thing, when you go to move it with the bone tool, it's going to extort. Because have you ever seen, like, if you made, I'll show you, if you make an object like a square, and you have you turn it into a symbol, we're just gonna call it a symbol 1, and you want to move it from here to here, and you're gonna insert a keyframe, and then you're gonna make a classic tween, and now you're gonna move it from here to here. So we're gonna have it here. Let's just say straight up above it, and then it's gonna go straight down, right? Well, when you're up in the original point, you see where that registration is in the center there? That's the transformation point. Now look inside this thing, and you'll see that the transformation point, or the registration point, is in the upper corner. It's not in the center. So if I go back here and I move this transformation point, and then I go down, you see how it goes to the side and then zips over? And I found that to be a lot of trouble because I'd be working with the thing trying to use the transformation point to transform the actual object. Like I wanted to spin it this way a little bit. But the problem was I spun it here, but then when the animation went, it wouldn't go straight down. It would go over that little bit right there. Why? Because here the transformation is still in the center. And over here the transformation is not in the center. So the computer interpolates the difference and moves it along a path to make those two match. So whenever you're working with something, you don't want to change the transformation point. So like if I put it down here and I insert another keyframe and I move it over here, and now I did not move the transformation point, you'll see that it moves smoothly. And that's what you wanted, right? You wanted to move from here to here. But if I don't think moving this one at the end is going to do anything. Watch. It'll still move. Oh, no. Now it goes way the hell over there and then jumps back. See, and that's something that you really have to watch out for when you're making your kinematics and adding it into your symbols. Is this transformation point is where the bone tool is hooked up to, and that registration point compared to that transformation point's got to be in the same place. So if this was an arm or something, you would have to redo that symbol and take it or take it like this and move it. And you see how the registration point doesn't change. See how it's still there? And then you move this circle on top of that transformation point. Like if this was an arm and you wanted it to move from the top of it, you'd have to put the transformation point there and then move that onto here. See, and now the transformation and registration are the same. Then when you go out, see how it moved it? But I haven't seen too much on the web about it, and they really don't speak about it too much. But I'm sure there's a whole theory behind it. In fact, here's the final walk cycle that I have with Zoltan that shows him actually walking with some of the special effects. And I'll show that to you just as an ending to this video. But there he is with his sword and let him fire, and he's walking along, you know. Dun, 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 dun. So there's really a lot you can do with the bone tool. In fact, you can actually move the bone tool with ActionScript. And here's a great book about it. This is ActionScript 3.0. By Keith Peters, and it talks about kinematic by programming, and this has forward kinematics and making things walk. So this is a whole next level as far as using inverse kinematics, and once you have this set up right, you're able to, right now I can just move the character back and forth, but I want to one day to be able to move the kinematics with the with programming too, and then you really get into some bizarre stuff. But that's for another tutorial, and thanks for watching, and I'll try and sign off so I don't waste too much time. But bless you all, and I hope that you learned something out of this.